Well, hello there, and welcome along to another edition of the 116. My name is Greg Fish. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. The 116 is a podcast about living higher, wider, closer, and deeper. It's a better life. Find out more about that, by the way, at Peoria1.com. Peoria1.com. Come there and join us for the conversation. Leave your questions or comments on our contact forms there, Peoria1.com. The 116 is a presentation of First United Methodist Church in downtown Peoria. Don't forget to like us and share us on social media and on YouTube. By the way, we're available on all podcast platforms. If you subscribe or follow, depending upon the terminology of wherever you are, that way you get all the updates and keep apprised of everything that's going on. Plus, it helps us get the word out, so we encourage you to do that. Well, I'm excited about my guest today because this is as close to having a celebrity in the studio with me as I ever get. Mr. Greg Batton, welcome, sir. Welcome to the studios.
Good to see you, Greg. How are you?
I'm great. And this is your first time in our brand new facility.
Do you call this something, this room that we are currently in, is it called something? Because you need like a cool name.
Well, the whole room is called the Digital Media Suite.
Oh, no.
You don't like that, though?
No, you need something like the Den.
The Den.
Or the Bullpen. Or, you know what I mean? Or something. I don't know. We'll come up before the end of the show. Let's come up with a name for it.
So when you...
This is a sweet room.
It is.
This is beautiful.
So when I tell people that we are located in the bowels of the church, that's probably not exactly what we're looking for. Then that's not good marketing.
Yeah, let's stay away from that one.
Yeah, okay.
But I think that it's very warm in here.
Uh-huh.
It feels like I'm in a club of some kind, not like a nightclub, but like I belong to a club.
Mm-hmm.
And your description, what is those words that you say at the beginning there about what this podcast is about?
Higher, wider, closer, deeper.
That is beautiful. I
Thank
really like
you.
that.
Well, I
That's
appreciate
very
that.
nice.
Yeah. It's just our little way of telling folks that we try to enrich lives here.
Yeah.
We take people closer to each other, closer to God, closer to and really this is what it's about here. What we're doing here is about taking people higher, wider, closer, deeper, because the reason I have you here with us, this is your second time, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dan Phillips eclipses you and the pastor. But other than that,
I'm number 3. That's great.
Yeah,
that's good company.
But you, if anybody, have your finger on the pulse of this community, being the guy who is the top-rated morning radio host in the community. And so we want to talk about our community because the heart of ministry is understanding where we are. And we figure you're the guy to bring on to do that.
I will do my best.
Okay, sounds good. So let's start here. The last time we talked, I'm going to start with the heaviest stuff first.
Please.
The last time we talked, racial tensions were really heating up around the nation and then in Peoria. So I'm not sure how many months it has been, but your assessment of how are we doing, because you weren't optimistic about how we were doing as a community when it came to racial tensions. Have you seen anything better, worse in your mind as far as how things are going on that front?
I honestly don't recall exactly where that conversation went that first time, but I will say this. I think we are striving to understand. This is going to be interesting, the way I'm going to say this.
Okay.
We're not striving to understand each other any better than we maybe did, but we are striving to understand where we are.
Okay.
And I think there's a subtle nuance to that. And that's a good first step to me. That's a good step. I think now I'm hearing more and more conversations with people that are on one side or another of a racial conversation who are trying to understand where we or they are in that conversation. So, I mean, obviously the dynamite one is the conversation of critical race theory that everyone's arguing about.
Right.
That to me is way over on one side because it's a little bit theoretical. It's very charged. And if you're going to do anything in a kid's curriculum at school, that's a very charged matter.
Sure.
But so step away from that and talk about just the everyday things. And I probably like you, I watch a lot. I observe a lot as much as I can, and especially feel vibes. I have been married for 26 years to an African American woman. We have 2 children who are obviously mixed race. And so I'm aware of where people are in conjunction with us, how they talk to us, how they look at us, how they make us feel. And I will say that I think that more and more people on every side of everything are doing a better job of not reaching out. I'm sure I'm going to be short of that, but having a paused moment to reflect on their own about what they believe in. Does that make any sense? I know I kind of took a long turn to get to that place, but.
Well, and to a degree, I think there's a sense of ridiculous about us being a couple of white guys sitting around and conjecturing
100%.
About this. But at the same time, we're the ones that need to do a lot of work as far as understanding where we need to go. So I suppose just speaking our language and understanding how we think about things like this is at least maybe moderately helpful.
I think it's moderately helpful. And if my experience can be any example, I grew up in a community that was all white. I didn't have any friends of any different race than what I grew up with. They all looked like me. And so as I became married and in a relationship and then married to my wife, almost 30 years ago is when we started our relationship, I guess maybe 27 or 28. I was dumb about stuff. I didn't know certain things. Well, after you're with somebody for that many years, you pick up on nuances of how people are talked to or about, or just the differences in families. I grew up in a family where food was not a celebration. It was not a celebration. We had food, but my mom wasn't a particularly good cook, and we didn't have we had dinners, but it wasn't spectacular. It wasn't this thing.
Okay.
And then I come into Yvonne, my wife, her family, and the culture is so different. And food celebrations, family reunions, and Thanksgivings and Christmas are wildly different. There's pride and there's joy and there's singing and dancing and stuff that I didn't grow up with. That's a small part. That's a tiny, tiny sliver of what I have learned culturally is different the way I grew up and the way my wife grew up. Is that a black and white thing? Maybe. It could be just that my family came from Germany and were kind of stoic and hard-faced people.
Sure.
And my wife's family learned the joy of being together as a family because of the struggles they shared for generations. So I think we get hung up too much on black, white, Latino, whatever it is. You're this way and you're this way. It's more like, how did you grow up, and why did you grow up that way?
Yeah. Well, and I
not answering that very well, but that's coming from my heart.
Well, and here's what concerns me, I guess, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted your take on this issue, is that things seem to have, if you will, quietened down. Now, when they quieten down, does that mean we get content, like, shh, let's not stir things up, let's not talk about it? Maybe. Or have they truly moved to a better place? And that's where I really don't have a feel for what's going on.
Well, my practical side will tell you, or tell me, to say it's quieter because there's more noise other places.
Okay.
The noise of COVID. We're everyone's nervous of some level. You're either nervous because you're afraid you're going to get it, or you're nervous because you don't want the vaccine, or you're nervous because you think there's government overreach, or you're worried that people aren't paying attention. Somebody's nervous about something regarding COVID. It is hard to concentrate on a bunch of big things at the same time.
Sure.
So the cycle of news, and I'm in a news talk station where you will have repetitive things that are there every day, and then one day they go away, and like, how did it go away? Well, there's something new that has replaced it, and for a minute. The media does not like a vacuum, so there will be some big news story, and I'm not downplaying the conversation about what racial conversations should be, but they often are used to fill in the hole when there's nothing else to talk about. Yeah, it's often that way.
Well, and it seems like to me that one of the things I figured out from being in this area is there very much is such a thing as two Peorias.
Oh,
that there's
100%.
That beautiful riverfront city that has some really positive things going for it. That's not too big, not too small, but yet then there's another community that has some of the highest crime statistics in the country, if I'm not mistaken.
One of the poorest zip codes in the United States, if not the, is 61605, which is just about 2 miles from where we sit.
Yeah. Yeah, and we see it around us too. That's part of the ministry of this church, is ministering to the communities that live around here, because we have a lot of homeless and disadvantaged folks. We have the Dream Center, which does a fantastic job of helping our community, but really right in the heart of all that. Now, you mentioned COVID, and that's my next place to go. It's, we were all just taking a big sigh of relief that it seems like we're coming out of the pandemic, and then they start talking about Delta Dawn. What's that virus have on?
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I do this. You and I are kindred spirits, because every time it's mentioned, I privately sing that song. I do. Helen Reddy, you and I both are doing the same thing with that Delta word.
Except maybe mine is Tanya Tucker, because I grew up on country. But yeah.
Did she cover that same song?
Yeah.
Oh man, I forgot that.
Yeah.
So wait a minute. Helen Reddy did it first,
mm-hmm.
and then Tanya did it later. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I think Tanya was like 13 when she recorded it, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll believe you.
So what are we looking at here? I mean, it's hard to know what the truth is today, except I'm one of those maybe schmucks that trust my medical community, that trust the things my doctors and nurses tell me. And if they tell me something with a straight face, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah.
I feel pretty relieved about it. So as far as looking at the vaccine is concerned, as far as taking precautions, but do you think for example, are we heading back to mask land again? Are we going to have to mask up again, do you think? What are we looking at?
Yes, I believe we are going to have to.
Okay.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I don't want it. I'm sorry that we're going to do it, but I think we are. Lady sent me a note today to ask me a question, and I haven't yet responded to her.
Okay.
And this is the question.
Mm-hmm.
She said, tell me where the mRNA vaccine has worked. And I am struggling to answer her, because the answer I have in my heart, my fast answer is, well, 99% of the people that are hospitalized currently over the last month
mm-hmm.
are people who have not been vaccinated. So I would say that the mRNA vaccine, where it has worked, is now.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolutely working. Does it have a long track record? No, it does not. It is relatively new.
Right.
But here's the part that's interesting to me, is that I don't think people, and again, and I'm no scientist, this is just stuff I've learned from being on the radio talking about this every day for the last number of months, is this mRNA technology is going to change everything. And if you want to talk about a big spiritual conversation,
mm-hmm.
mRNA technology has the ability to cure dozens of diseases that kill us.
Wow.
And there is a guy by the name of Jake Beecraft. He grew up here.
Mm-hmm.
He has a PhD in physics from MIT.
Mm-hmm.
He owns a company called Strand Therapeutic. He is trying to get Peoria to be a center for labs that are going to be at the forefront of this, what I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
Is where, let's say you and I have the exact same diagnosis. We both have, I'm going to pick something, bone cancer.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
The mRNA injection, we both get it, but your body's different than mine. You have a different DNA. I have a different DNA. The way that this is in lay person's terms here, but so that mRNA technology ignites your autoimmune system, and it ignites mine, but not the same. We're not getting the same shot. We're being given the same chance, and the chance is that your body will, quote, heal itself from within, courtesy of this boost from this mRNA injection. Okay, that's a real basic way of saying this. But where it comes interesting to me is, I asked Jake on the radio not long ago,
mm-hmm.
I said, what is this going to do to life expectancies? And he goes, it is likely you will live to be 120.
I don't know if I like that or not.
Me either.
Yeah.
And it brings up a whole host of other problems. How am I going to have money to be 120?
Yes.
How are we, as if less people die,
mm-hmm.
how are we going to deal with overpopulation? How are we going to do with the resources that we already have a hard problem scattering around evenly, right? And spiritually, is that something that us Christians think, oh, that's a good idea? I don't know. I don't know where that falls.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a real, it's where it's coming. This is not science fiction. This is coming in the next 10 years.
Wow. Wow.
And Peoria, but you were asking me earlier about what the future of Peoria is. Mr. Beecraft and people like him are attempting through something called Peoria Biomade to have laboratories headquartered here in Peoria, right down the street in the warehouse district of downtown Peoria, to be at the forefront of this. Peoria literally could be the headquarters of this world-changing technology. It's going to happen. It's a matter of where it's going to happen. So now that slides over to the economic part of medicine and the impact it could have on a community the size of Peoria. It could be mind-altering.
Right. Well, I heard an interesting observation about people's response to these things, and because we pretty much realize that people's responses are falling along political lines these days.
A lot of cases, yeah, for sure.
And I have people who I respect greatly and know to be very intelligent people who are really think very differently about me on this subject than I do. And one of the observations that I've heard, the difference between this and the polio vaccination, which was maybe the last really big major vaccination to come around of this level, was that the government let it happen in the private sector, whereas this time around the government has tried to take the lead on pushing the vaccine, and as a result, it's become a political issue rather than a social issue. Do you think there's any validity to that idea?
Yeah, there probably is. I'm not real hip on. I'm not old enough for the polio story. I mean, that was just prior to me being around. I'd say you're probably right about that. Also, if I'm not mistaken, Jonas Salk, who came up with the vaccine, made zero money. He refused to make money on it.
Wow. Okay.
And I don't believe that's happening today.
Okay.
I believe there's people making a boatload of money.
We would like to think that the companies are altruistic. Probably not.
No, not so much. But I think it's a little bit of a unfair comparison sometimes to talk about prior vaccines.
Okay.
Because this is not your dad or mom's or even our big brother's vaccine. This is completely different.
Different thing.
And this igniting of the protein cells and all that stuff that happens with this vaccine, we're not being injected with COVID, like the flu vaccine. They try to guess at what the flu is going to be every year, and they try to replicate it and give us that so we can fight against it. That's not the way this works. And I absolutely understand that's frightening, because what is it?
Yes.
What is it? And I don't know what your original question about COVID was, but I think we are going to be in for some months of turmoil, and I think for the next few weeks, this is mid-August that we're talking today, schools, some of them have already started, other ones are going to start next week. Going back to school is going to be clunky.
Yeah.
It's going to be clunky.
I mean, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but since I've had the vaccine, I do pick up C-SPAN now.
Nice. Oh, that's great.
It's boring, though. I mean, I have no trouble sleeping, that's for sure. No, just kidding. Well, but, we were talking about the fiery reaction to the vaccinations, and, are we in for another round of shutdowns, which I can't imagine how devastating that would be to our friends in business, restaurant owners, and that sort of thing.
Here's what I think. I really do think. Now, I'm going to maybe sound like I'm talking out of two sides of my face here, but maybe we won't have the shutdowns. The masks, I think we're going to be asked to do, and we're already being asked to.
Sure.
I came in here today not knowing what your situation was. I'm vaccinated, you're vaccinated, and I wore one in out of respect for you because I didn't know what the situation was. But I think, but what I read today, the mayor of San Francisco, if you're going to do anything in San Francisco, you are going to have to show a vaccine card.
Interesting.
And I think that's where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Now, the question I have, and this is an unanswered question in my mind, but just to toss it out there for folks to think about, what is the liability of a place, a business, a venue, a school, if they don't require masks or vaccines and someone gets COVID and dies? Let's say a school. So a school says, you know what, we're not going to do mask mandate. You can do it if you want to, but we're not going to mandate it. And a child, now these under 12-year-olds are not protected by anything other than a mask because there's no vaccine for them. A child dies. In the world that we live in, do you not think that those parents are going to sue that school district? I do. I think they absolutely will. Because you lost someone, and then you could easily argue, well, you, entity, didn't do enough to protect my family member.
I think so.
I think we're going to see that for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
Those lawsuits.
I think. Well, Now, the thing that I've been on the forefront of it, and in years past, I've served as a senior pastor, and I'm kind of glad that I'm not in that role now, because I've watched our pastor here, Pastor Tim Osmond, have to struggle with being the man in the hot seat for deciding these issues, which, and I think Pastor Tim has done an incredible job with navigating the situation when it's really impossible to make anybody happy with your decisions. Yeah. As far as being a guy who's on the air and regularly talking to people, are you in a similar, it's a different occupation, but still a similar idea that, are you finding it harder than ever to keep the public happy with what you're doing, or are you getting more dissension than ever before?
No more dissension or anything.
Okay.
The approach that my partner Dan and I take, we are not on the radio to tell anybody what to do.
Gotcha.
On any subject. We've been doing this for 16 years. We will bring up stuff, and we approach it as two guys, like this, what we're doing right here. Two men sitting around talking about the stuff that affects us. Sure. And sometimes, obviously we try to be funny, and we try to be sometimes satirical and things like that. But we're not the kind of radio talk show that says, you must do this or you're dumb. That's not happening.
Yes.
And so we don't get, I don't think we get a lot of that, because we don't intend to do that. What we intend to do is tell you everything we know and maybe give you our take on it, because some things don't make sense to me. In the state of Florida right now, the governor there, who is very anti-mask mandate, and the school districts, they're butting heads because the schools want to have masks and he doesn't want them to have them. But now, yesterday, he announced he's going to have a COVID strike force, which is going to go out and provide these injections of plasma from people who had already had COVID. They're going to take the antibodies from that plasma and inject them in people who are diagnosed with COVID to relieve their symptoms, to try to save their lives.
Okay.
To me, that makes, I don't want to say no sense, but I don't understand. So over here, a person doesn't want to take the vaccine, but over here they're willing to put plasma in their arm from somebody that already had the disease. I have a hard time computing that. Yes. I have a hard time computing it.
Yeah. And
on top of that, it's going to cost the state billions of dollars in taxpayer money to get that program done, and the vaccine's free. So I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but I do like to think, well, we're going to tell you all that. We're going to tell you all of that. You make sense of that the way you make sense of it.
Yeah.
But if somebody tells me they don't want the vaccine for whatever reason, I don't get mad at them. Yeah. Or if they say that I hate vaccine people, I'm not going to get mad. There's no room for that. And that's the problem. We got into a place now where you can't have a conversation without somebody picking a side.
Well, and we're such funny people anyway, the things that we decide to make an issue and that we don't. One of the arguments I hear is we don't know what we're putting into our body. Well, you eat hot dogs, don't you?
I see that hot dog story all the time, and it makes me laugh. Yeah. And the other one is the distrust of science. Every single, I would defy you to name something in your life today that didn't involve science. Something. Sure. We're sitting in a room that reeks of science. Everything that we're doing right now, allowing and you listening to it on whatever device you're listening to, is science. The radio station I work at is science. The car I go home in is science. The shirt you're wearing is science. Everything we do is science, and it's interesting to me that we pick some versions of science and go, I don't know if they know what they're doing.
Yes. Well, and one of the interesting things about and I want to wrap this up, but the mask conversation is my doctor told me that she has never seen such a low incidence of flu as what she's seen. So to me, I think we can measure some benefit. Even, whatever your position is, the doctors are saying never seen less flu incidents before.
Yeah, because we did a good job.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. Well, let's talk about some different, more lighter things in Peoria right now. I had an experience recently that I just loved. My grandkids were in town from Tulsa, and I took them to the Peoria Riverfront Museum.
Nice.
Never been there before. That is a fantastic place, and they have the T-Rex exhibit, and that's one of those undiscovered gems in our community, and I'm wondering, are there other places that I haven't discovered yet? What in your viewpoint are some of the undiscovered gems of our community?
How old are your grandchildren?
8 and 9.
They might be a tad on the upside of this, but in Glen Oak Park is the Peoria Playhouse Children's Museum.
Okay.
And especially if you have kids, I'll go. I might exclude your folks a little bit, maybe 6 and under.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful place. It's in the old old building there that used to be the headquarters of the park district.
Okay.
And it's a hands-on place where the kids play in the water and they play sand. It's very touchy-feely, kind of interactive place. Gorgeous place. The Peoria Zoo is also an unheralded place. It's fantastic. I'll tell you one. This is a commercial entity. Maybe your grandkids are a little young.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. There's a place called Carteville. You ever been to Carteville?
I have not.
It is a go-kart track.
Okay.
Mini golf place.
Uh-huh.
Batting cages. They have a little
Nice.
water bumper boats and things like that.
Okay.
It's on Swords Avenue off of Farmington Road. To be honest with you, I haven't taken my family there in years, but it is awesome. It is just one of those places you go, I didn't know this was here. It's awesome. You got to take your grandkids over there. Let's go around the corner. Let's see what else we got. Pekin's Mineral Springs Park.
Okay.
My hometown. That's where I grew up. You can go the paddle boats out on the lagoon for a couple of bucks or something. Spend an hour out on the lagoon paddling around and realizing that you haven't done leg work in a while because it's, and then you get the grandkids wet because you go by the big fountain and it splashes. That is a beautiful park, and they got nice playgrounds and picnic areas.
Mm-hmm.
And just if you're a hiker and a walker, Forest Park Nature Center, Grandview Drive, of course, to walk. And there's just so many places to enjoy the outdoors here. I just think the list. Oh, another one, Donovan Park. Donovan Park, which is out Northmore and Knoxville area. That used to be a golf course. A number of years ago, the park district decided to dissociate the golf part of it. And now it's this just open green space. Awesome. It is like our own central park right in the middle of ours. And it is almost literally in the center of Peoria.
And by the way, I need somebody to explain this game of golf to me because I now live on a golf course.
Oh,
I don't
you
play
do?
golf.
Yeah, nice.
Which is kind of a weird. I love the view, but it's just so it amuses me to watch the golfers out there, especially the guys with these contraptions that carry their golf clubs for them, but it kind of walk mechanically along beside them because it's so hard to actually push them. So, are you a golf player or by any chance?
Here's how this goes. I grew up playing golf from the time I was a little boy. My dad and I played every weekend. I was on my golf team in high school. I played a lot of golf in my 20s, and then I did something that stopped golf.
What's that?
Had children.
Yeah, okay,
Children came along, my oldest two, Katie and David, and then you get busy with something else, right?
Sure.
And then you go out once in a while, and then you think you still know how to play, and you don't because you haven't been playing. Right. And then I got worse and worse. Then my son got old enough to play golf, so then my son David and I would go play. He got quite good, and then he became a man and moved on to his life, and I stopped playing again. I'll play twice a year. By the time I'm on the 9th hole, I want to throw my clubs in the lake because you got to play in order to have it be enjoyable, right?
Well, yeah.
This year, however, I have played more golf than I've played in a long time because that same son of mine, David, who's 34, started asking his old man to go out and play golf just the way my dad and I played when I was a kid, and it's cool. And now I don't worry about it so much. I'm still not great again, and that was never great, but I'm still not very good. But I don't care anymore because it's the fun of being out there with my son.
Well, and my standard line is I have trouble getting past the hole with a windmill. I mean,
yes.
but it's a game that requires you to do the most unnatural of stances. People have tried to teach me, and I'm uncoordinated.
There's a man. If you ever want to learn how to play, I got a guy who works at the Peoria Park District. His name is Greg Walker.
Okay.
He's the pro.
Good name.
At the Learning Center.
Uh-huh.
He will teach you how to play.
Awesome. Okay. So anyway, the golf was a little diversion. They're talking about hidden gems within the community. Any others that came to your mind that we should mention here for the folks that
Let's see. Of course, you got the Riverfront, anything that's happening on the Riverfront concert-wise. I think one of the great treasures of Central Illinois is our arts community. And by arts, I mean every possible definition of that. Mm-hmm. Visual arts, the Peoria Art Guild downtown, to the amount of extraordinary talent that exists musically in this community. It's incredible. There are bands and players and singers and performers all around Central Illinois. And now it's maybe getting bumpy a bit with COVID again, but we opened the doors back up to go see live music, and people rushed back out.
Yes.
And so if you get a chance to just go and find some nice music, go do it, man. Go do it.
And I'm thrilled by the fact that shows are coming back in general anyway. I went out and anxiously bought tickets to see comedian Nate Bargatze, who's come into the area.
Guy's hilarious.
I hope that actually happens. But just seeing the comedy clubs open back up, and I notice that you're doing more and more gigs these days.
I'm back.
As well.
I do part-time stand-up comedy, and I've had a few in the last little bit. And I got another one coming up next week. I've never done this before, but my wife and I are doing a show together where I'm going to do comedy. My wife is not a comedian, but she is a singer. So she's going to do the first half of the show with her accompanist, Winston, and they're going to perform music. And then I'm going to come up and wrap it up with stand-up, I think. I mean, I'm not sure how this is going to – we've never done it quite this way before, so it's going to be fun.
So she's opening – your wife is opening.
Yeah, I hesitate. I've been married long enough to say that I will never say that. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
I hear you, my friend. Yes. Okay. Well, and by the way, your wife is probably one of your greatest assets. She's just a fantastic person, and
my wife, Don Greer,
oh my
is a multitude of talents. She does a lot of different things, and I'm trying to encourage her. You know, when you see somebody, and you know somebody who has a talent that God gave them, and they use it, but they're not using it as much as you think that God wants them to. Like, I know what God wants, right? but that's the way I feel about my wife. She's so extraordinarily entertaining when she sings, and I just want people to see it, and not for her honor or glory or whatever, but just to see what talent was given to her, because it's natural. It just came to her. And so I'm quietly trying to encourage more of that, but it's that's an interesting trip.
Gotcha. Well, Greg Batton, it's been a pleasure to have you.
This is over already?
I know it's hard to believe, isn't it? These things just fly by.
Yeah.
I had Dan Phillips in here the other day, and I thought it would never end. So, no, just kidding. Dan does a great job, but privileged to have you with us.
Before you wrap it up, how about the Brickyard?
The Brickyard.
Because you have a brick wall behind you.
Yes.
We came at the beginning of this. We talked about we should name this room.
Oh, I forgot about that.
The Brickyard.
The Brickyard.
The brick. The bricks. The brick. How about just the brick? Hey, welcome to the brick. I don't know. I'm struggling.
I don't. Being a Hoosier myself, being from Southern Indiana, the Brickyard has a lot of
and that might be
meaning.
copywritten too. The Brickyard.
True. We work on the brick thing.
Or the wall. How about the wall?
The wall.
Welcome to the wall. No, that doesn't sound good.
And then I'm another brick in the wall.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, because clearly I don't need no education. So
true enough.
Yes. All right. Well, you've got. You know what needs to happen? I need to die so they can just name the room after me, and just kind of lay down my life so the room can have a great name, the Fish House or something.
The Fish Den, not the Fish House. That's a restaurant.
Yeah.
The fish. They'll see
that's true. That's true.
The Fish Den, the Fishing Hole, the Fishing Hole,
Fishing Hole,
the Fishing Hole. I'm Greg Fish at the Fishing Hole. Welcome to the Fishing Hole. I love it.
I like that.
Let's go with it.
Well, I like that.
Right,
okay. So when I was in high school, I had a column called Something Fishy, so I guess that would work out.
There you go.
As
Perfect.
Well. Okay, perfect. We've got a name for the place now, the Fish Hole. We've accomplished more than I ever thought we would accomplish here this morning. Greg, again, thank you very much for coming along with us. It's been a pleasure. This is the 116. It's a podcast about living life higher, wider, closer, and deeper. A presentation of First United Methodist Church in downtown Peoria. And don't forget to like us and share us on social media. Be sure and follow us or subscribe as well, if you will, please, on YouTube, for example. It's free, and it keeps you updated on all of our episodes. Go to peoria1.com for more info. That's peoria1.com. My name is Greg Fish, and I'm out of here. Thanks for joining us today.